Okay, good evening. It's 6:30. We're going to go ahead and call to order. Acting in for the clerk today is Officer Caserta. So, Officer Caserta, if you'd be so kind to call the order. Roll call.
Good evening, Mayor Trutman.
Here.
Vice Mayor Sardella.
Here.
Commissioner Samaria.
Present.
Commissioner Tudor.
Here.
Commissioner Wise.
Here.
Stand for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
On Friday, the Commission was notified that we received a letter from Gray Robinson that John Herron has left the firm. Our contract for legal services is with the firm of Gray Robinson. They are the attorneys of record for the village. As of February 7th, John Herron ceased to be our attorney. I'm going to go ahead and read the decorum rules. All comments must be addressed to the Commission as a body and not to individuals. Any person making impertinent, slanderous remarks or becomes boisterous while addressing the Commission shall be barred from further audience before the Commission by the presiding officer unless permission to continue or again address the Commission is granted by the majority of vote of the Commission members present. No clapping, applauding, heckling, or verbal outbursts in support, in, or opposition to speaker or his or her remarks shall be permitted. No signs or placards shall be allowed in the Commission chambers. Please mute or turn off your cell phones or pagers at the start of the meeting. Failure to do so may result in being barred from the meeting. Person exiting the chamber shall do so quietly. With that, we open for public comments. Did you push it? Did you push the button? Now it's on. It's on now.
Okay. Sunday afternoon, we got word of item 6A, decision on the village manager, and submittals were delivered with that item of the last year's finalists for the selection process, which resulted in John Herron and Gray Robinson being appointed as village manager without any further explanation of that item. It was very cryptic, I thought, so I reached out to the manager and commission to express my alarm at the opaque agenda. It effectively defeated any meaningful notice for lack of information. And I heard back from 3 out of 6 of you. You know who you are. Thank you for that. In the late morning Monday, there was no additional notice, but the website was updated with an agenda memo and Gray Robinson's letter before us today. For those among us who are not in the legal field, it's important to recognize that the rules regulating the Florida bar require very specific parameters to communicate with clients when a lawyer is leaving a firm, so that it can be determined what the client's instructions are. In this instance, it was checking a box as to which firm or attorney will continue to represent the client. That's RRTFB 4-5.1, Procedures for Lawyers Leaving Law Firms, for your reference. In my experience, it appears that the letter from Gray Robinson follows the regulation standard. Last year, the village engaged in a robust selection process, starting with John Herron's resignation, which was accepted at the March 6th meeting. Attorney John Hearn's resignation. Attorney Hearn had served the village for 20-plus years. 16 weeks later, on June 26th, the commission settled on 2 law firms and 1 sole practitioner to invite for presentations. On July 11th, John Herron from Gray and Robinson was chosen for the post by a vote of 4-1. He started on August 1st. 4 months from start to finish of that selection process. And Resolution 2018-23 was adopted and approved with the engagement letter, and that was a 5-0 vote. It's disingenuous to now say that the contract, if it were called that, is with Gray and Robinson. As we went through the selection process, all commissioners, except only the mayor, based the choice of village attorney in large part on the value of having a deep bench of practice areas, labor, employment, zoning, land use, litigation, but also placing value on continuity with one attorney, John Herron, being primarily responsible for services and meetings. If you do not already If you haven't already done so, check out Fox Robinson's website, and you'll find that they're a reputable firm engaged in multiple practice areas, including the ones of concern here. If Attorney Herron were here, he would share those details with you, but I was told this afternoon, and I quote, that the Commission wanted to speak freely without any of the candidates there tonight. Setting aside that such a decision sounds like Commission action taken out of sunshine, I find it curious that a special meeting is called for a decision on the village attorney, and the person who is the topic of discussion is asked not to be present. Whatever you intend to discuss tonight, particularly if it involves perceived shortcomings, these are most appropriately aired with Village Attorney John Herron, including allowing him an opportunity for response. In fact, it is required by the village charter. People, we stand here tonight, and there is a duly selected and appointed village attorney who is changing his firm affiliation. If you seek today to remove that village attorney, this commission is bound by specific removal procedures set out in the village charter, section 3.03. It's your obligation to read it and follow it before making a decision on village attorney. An end run around village law by checking a box in reply to Gray Robinson's letter does nothing to satisfy your obligations according to the charter. That's the charter that each one of you took an oath to uphold. Do the right thing today. Address your concerns.
I'm sorry, could you finish
within
up,
the
please?
precepts of professional standards, due process, and the law. Thank you.
Thank
One
you.
final point. At least two of you responded to me with some information, saying they were reviewing some information that was provided to them by the village in support of this item, and consider this my public records request for copies of those documents as their public
Thank you.
documents. Thank you.
Barbara Kuehl, 111th Street. When I first saw the calendar with the talking about the attorney, because I heard the attorney was leaving, I just assumed, well, I guess that's it. I just assumed that you were going to be talking about the next step in how you were going to look for an attorney, which seemed normal. And then I looked at it again a couple of days later, and I realized you were doing a selection. I sometimes leave the meetings early. Maybe there was a point that the commission discussed the next process in selecting an attorney and looking for one. All the time I've been here, we've always done RFPs. I can't believe that we had an attorney. He is going to another firm, and that firm is now not even included in the selection process. Who made that decision? The commission is responsible for hiring the attorney. It's one of the few things the commission is responsible for, not the manager, no one else in the village. It's one of our highest paid employees, one of our most important employees. And now we have kind of the leftovers from the last go-round, and we have another firm that now I think doesn't even have anybody that deals with municipal governments. And the attorney we have, speaking of continuity, is now not even in the running. So the 4 or 5 months that he spent trying to learn things about the village, we'll be starting all over. I would like an answer from this commission how this came about. Who decided to put this list of candidates, and who decided not to do an RFP? Because you are shortchanging this village. It might, and I don't really want to hear about, well, we're out of time, it's quick, we have to do something quickly. Somehow we all survive. John Hearn left. Things happen, we survive. We've survived without a village manager nicely for months. We can survive with an interim attorney until we get a good choice and something where you've taken your time and done due diligence for this community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chuck Ross, 11166 Griffin Boulevard. My first question is, why wasn't the Gray Robinson letter included in the backup to explain what was going on? I asked a couple of people about the agenda, and they were totally confused. They thought our attorney actually had resigned, which he hasn't. I've not heard any discussions regarding displeasure with the attorney. We hired the attorney. The law firm was secondary. There should be no concern that we won't continue to have a multidisciplined support, as Fox and Rothschild is equal to Gray Robinson in that respect, but it appears nobody asked any information about John Herron's new law firm. If there are concerns or complaints about the current attorney, rather than rushing into deciding to hire a new attorney, a full public discussion needs to take place. In fact, it's required by the charter, as already been specified. And not only was he was not even told about we were having this meeting, and not only was he not told, he was told not to attend. If there is a decision to change attorneys, then a new process should take place, as Barbara Kuehl just indicated. The real question is, why is the attorney not at this meeting? The manner that this is being handled lacks transparency, continuity. It leads to instability and is an unfair process, as the attorney is not present to respond to questions or introduce his new law firm. The attorney serves at the pleasure of the majority of the commission, and the contract is at will. It seems to me that the rational process would be to continue with John Herron in his new law firm, and if the decision is to change, then we'll have a full public discussion about it. To me, this seems to be a capricious decision and not well thought out. As it appears, the decision's already been made not to continue with John, apparently. I've been told that the mayor and the attorney did not see eye to eye on a few issues. If there's some nefarious purpose to removing the attorney because of this, then who is going to want to work for Biscayne Park if they are subject to the whim of certain public officials' displeasure because an employee or staff member doesn't agree with them? This type of behavior leads to a fear of retaliation and a hostile work environment. This is essentially what happened to our prior manager. It was behind the scenes. She disappeared, and we were told nobody knew why she resigned. It seems to be happening again with the attorney. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments?
Good evening, MacDonald Kennedy, 11705 Northeast 11th Place. Real quickly, I agree with a lot of that. And generally, I'm just kind of confused why we're here. I'd like to know specifically who called this meeting, because it didn't say it in the email that I received, and it seems really disingenuous. I mean, it seems to be a popular word among the group these days. To say you want transparency in government and include people in things, and then call a meeting on 2 days' notice where no one seems to know what's going on. So I'm not sure why, if something happened on Friday, you had to send an email out on Sunday to tell everybody there's a meeting on Tuesday for something that it seems to me could wait a little bit. So just ask you guys to follow rules, create a general feeling of goodwill among the community, genuinely act like you want to include people in things, and if you didn't act like you were up to something, people wouldn't come in here and think that maybe you are. So I would like to know who called this meeting. I know there are rules about who calls meetings, and I don't know exactly what those rules are, but I'd like an answer. I think Tracy can call meetings on her own. I think the rest of you can call meetings if you get together and you want to have a meeting that Tracy doesn't want to have. I'm not sure if Christian can call meetings, but who called this meeting? Because you guys can't discuss this outside of the room. That would be against the law, from what I understand. So you guys can't have had a conversation, and none of you look very surprised to be sitting here right now. So I would think that you guys would all be looking at each other, why are we here? What happened? So who called the meeting? Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments?
Fred Jonas, 918 119th Street. It seems to me there really are two issues. One is the one that has been described by pretty much everybody else before me, and that is the avalanche of procedural faults having to do with what this meeting is doing here, and what the ingredients of it are, and how it got called. And that's important. It is certainly a collection of violations, but I think the other issue, the important underlying dynamic, is the one Chuck brought up, which has to do with why anybody would have chosen to imagine that we don't have complete continuity. And I will say that when Barbara Kuehl says we don't have an attorney right now, I would disagree with her. I think we absolutely do have an attorney. we have a choice at how we want to think of having an attorney. We can either think we have Gray Robinson and ask him to send somebody else, or we can remember that we chose Gray Robinson because we chose John Herron, and we can have him. Either way, we have an attorney. We've made a commitment. And the question then comes back to Chuck's point, which is, what motivated all of this? And I would certainly agree with Chuck that it seems that this is very personality-driven. Roxy Ross mentioned that the original vote in favor of John Herron and Gray Robinson was 4-1. It's worth noting that the one who voted against it was Tracy Trutman, who generally does not tolerate being disagreed with or being outvoted. In addition, as has also been pointed out, Tracy has disagreed with John, or felt John disagreed with her on a couple of occasions. Frankly, I have not always been happy with John Herron, mainly because I think he enables Tracy too much. But she focuses on the very rare occasion when he doesn't enable her, and she gets unhinged and out of control, which is fairly typical. We've seen a lot of that over the past 2 years. And I think that's really what this meeting is for. So I'd like you to think about this. I'd like you to realize that the entire procedure, the entire underlying dynamic is grossly faulty, that if we have anything to discuss about an attorney, we can certainly do that at any monthly commission meeting. We have never had a procedure yet with John Herron where we have evaluated him. We could certainly do that. If anybody has questions about him, those questions can be raised at a monthly meeting. And if there's any question, whether he leaves Gray Robinson or not, that we're not happy with him, there's a normal procedure. Roxy talked about it, Chuck talked about it, and that's really what needs to happen. So I'd like you to end the meeting here and acknowledge that it's a faulty meeting.
Any further public comments? Okay, closing public comments? I'm going to make a few comments first. As a reminder, this is not a performance review under the charter of Mr. Herron's services. We are without an attorney and need to move forward and look at our options before us. Our options are stay with Gray Robinson, pick someone else, move with John Herron to his new firm, and if we pick someone else, we can do that, or we can also look at the two previous finalists, or open up the position for publication again. I'll open up to the floor. Commissioners?
I'll go ahead and start.
Go ahead.
After John Herron notified me that he was leaving Gray Robinson, my understanding is we're going to have this meeting, and it should be pretty straightforward. The only question that should be before us at this point in time is, do we stay with Gray Robinson, for whom we have the contract with, or do we go with John Herron to Fox Rothschild? I asked John Herron to provide me some information on the new firm he's going to, and I just saw that he emailed some information on Fox Rothschild. I haven't had a chance to look at it, of course. But there's, one thing we need to ask ourselves, if we're considering staying with Gray Robinson, we should find out whether or not they're still going to be able to provide us the services that we're looking for. My understanding is they've had some personnel changes at that firm. So for me, this whole meeting should be simply, are we going to stay with Gray Robinson, or are we going to go to Fox Rothschild with John Herron? I'm not going to entertain any of the candidates from March or April. If we want to go that route, that has to be a whole new process. So for me, personally, I've been satisfied with the performance of John Herron. One thing that I've liked is that there has been a couple of strong personalities that have been on the commission, and he's stood his ground in both cases. And I think that's something that we need from an attorney. We don't need an attorney to necessarily be our cheerleader. Sometimes he needs to take us to task. He's got to take us to task. It's for the betterment of the village. So my recommendation at this time, my gut is to go with and continue a relationship with John Herron at Fox Rothschild. However, I would like to, the only little hurdle for me is I would like to just look at the information about Fox Rothschild to find out about, excuse me, to find out exactly about their services, the team that they have there. But at this time, I'm inclined to continue the relationship.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else want to go next?
I just second what Commissioner Tudor has said, that I just am receiving, I literally am sitting here and saw the emails come in, and there's a lot of information in them, and I'd like to review them, and I need more information before I make any kind of a decision.
Okay.
And
Commissioner Johnson-Silva?
since everyone's speaking in that vein, I concur. I concur with what Barbara Kuehl said during public comments, because for me, our retention letter is with Gray Robinson. I understand that we selected John Herron with that package, but it's a package, meaning we looked at the firm as well as the individual that would be representing us from that office. I asked whether or not there was information sent over by Mr. Herron for his new firm, because I think there's really no way for us to make a decision, an intelligent decision, if we were to keep John Herron without also knowing about the firm, the same way we had that in the original process. We looked at all of the firms, we took the time to go through all of those documents. You know, Gray Robinson's package was pretty thick. I don't know what Fox Rothschild's package would look like for us to review. So, to answer some of the other residents' questions, I was informed of this situation probably briefly a little bit by Attorney Herron. And when it came to the point that there was this meeting, I was notified at the same time as everyone. So there was nothing nefarious going on with regard to this meeting. But I feel like I can't make an intelligent choice as to which direction to go with not having the information from this firm. And the fact that we received it 15 minutes before the meeting, I've not had time to go through it. So I think that's pretty much what I have to say. I don't think that this can be done tonight fairly.
Thank you. Commissioner Samaria?
There's residents have brought up some good points tonight, that questions that I think that this is a rush to get it to do this tonight. I don't see why we need to do this. My biggest concern is I'd like to have, if the city manager could explain how this whole process happened and why we're in a rush to get it. Everything has to be done tonight. And if it's true that the attorney was told not to come tonight, and I'd like to. Residents have brought up some questions that I have major concern. If we are to use him with a new firm that he works at, then a new firm should be here. Gray should be here. All of this is very good to look at it. Guess what? I'm not an attorney. I don't understand any of this stuff. People on here that are attorneys, and the mayor that knows this stuff. I don't know any of this stuff. To read all of this stuff, we should be hearing from the individuals. Tonight, when this is all finished, I'd like to make a motion that we postpone this until we have all these questions answered.
Okay, the way this all came about, John Herron told us several weeks ago that he was leaving Gray Robinson, and that he would, wanted to keep it quiet until Gray Robinson knew and all that was resolved. Last week, he announced it to Gray Robinson. They sent us a letter asking if we would like to stay with Gray Robinson, stay with John Herron at the new Fox Rothschild, or look for someone else. That letter had on it for my signature. I can't sign it. This is a commission decision. So I called each commissioner and said, do you guys want to have a meeting? And it was suggested that we meet tonight for 30 minutes or so before the code workshop, since we were all going to be here anyway. So okay, we did it. And that was it. There was nothing nefarious or sneaky about it. It was quick. And so, that's the way that happened.
Did you just to make it seem that one of the other implications was that somehow he was left out of this? Did you ask for materials from his new firm that he's moving to?
I did speak with John Heron on Sunday, twice actually. He reiterated that we would have information on his firm on Monday. I received that information in an email about 10 minutes before this meeting, I guess, because I just got a text from him saying, that, yeah, he just sent the email with the information on Fox Rothschild about 10 minutes ago. And I was sitting here when I answered it. So, I mean, that's, that's a little late knowing that this was, happening tonight. Either way, I mean, if the commission wants to take the time and review it, certainly I recommend that. It's always better to have more information than less. So.
Okay, so just to be clear to everybody, the consensus appears to be to review the material from the firms? Is that
Yes,
correct?
of course.
All firms?
Yep.
Okay.
And to hear them, and to hear from them. Not only to get
To hear from them, the normal process would be to send out an ad, and then you want them all to come in, Commissioner
Isn't that
Samaria?
how we, I'm just asking a question.
That is
Isn't-
how we hired previously.
Okay, so we're talking about hiring an attorney, aren't we?
Yes.
So that's how the process should be.
Okay, so does anybody have any objection to have presentations, or do you want to have an open advertisement for a period of time? How would you like to handle this? Anybody?
No.
I don't know if we have to
No,
go
not-
through the process of advertising for the attorney position. I think right now we just got to, the first step we have to do is decide, are we going to, because our contract with Gray Robinson, are we going to continue our relationship with Gray Robinson? Are we going to terminate that relationship with Gray Robinson and pursue the relationship with Fox Rothschild with John Heron? In which case, what is we'd have to get some guidance on the best way to handle that. But I think right now we just need to
I think
make a decision on whether or not we're going to stay with Gray Robinson, or are we going to pursue the relationship with John Heron at Fox Rothschild.
you're giving two options. He's asking for a third. I'm just saying what's being said, so.
Because
Madam Mayor?
I feel that technically the engagement is with Gray Robinson. Yes, Gray Robinson sent this letter that gave these three choices, but I think I agree with Commissioner Tudor that it's like we first have to get to the first step. It's just premature. The fact that we received documentation from the firm that our attorney is switching over to, no one's had an opportunity to digest that, to review that in the same manner in which we did when we hired our attorney. That I don't think we're at the step yet of deciding whether or not we're saying, okay, we're not moving forward with the new firm.
In other words,
John Heron. Okay, now, yes, let's open this process back up to doing an RFP. I think it would be premature to.
okay. So, go ahead, Commissioner
Question?
Samara.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Ms. Pettier? Okay, question. If we're under contract with Gray, can Gray send us, since Hearn can't, I pronounced his name wrong and I apologize, since he can't do anything, can't Gray send us one until we make up our minds to, since they're still under contract with us, there should be no reason why they can't send another representative to
Well,
be.
while we've contracted them, they are still our attorney of
Okay,
record.
so then they should be able
So
to.
they either have to send somebody to our next meeting, okay? No, we can't, I'm sorry, we cannot do that. We can either, excuse me, I'm sorry.
What you're saying is not correct.
Please stop. I'm respectfully, we can ask, and I've got attorneys on the bar here, but we can ask them to send a representative if that's what we choose to do, or we can ask them to present. There are different ways to handle this, and I'm going to let the two attorneys sitting on the dais assist us with this.
Well, I've spoken to.
You've spoken already? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, from the letter that we received, this isn't working, my voice carries. From the letter that we received, they haven't offered a replacement for Mr. Heron, so it would be interesting to see if they, there's a little bit of a like, we'd like to continue, and therefore we're offering you somebody else, but it's really a very form letter, stay with us or go. And so if we have explored that, and when I say we, I mean the royal we. Obviously, I wasn't included in that conversation, but the commission explored and felt that the bench that they appreciated was Gray Robinson. And, Herron was their pinch hitter. Now that the team has changed and it should be weighed. Was it the bench? Was it the hitter? If the hitter is with a new team, what does that bench look like? We just got information 10 minutes ago about that bench. So I'd like to see and hear from both sides in order to make an intelligent decision and not just assume that all of the value that we're getting will travel with Mr. Herron to his new firm, or that we cannot retain the same value at Gray Robinson. I need to understand who the players are and what the dynamic will be.
Okay, so are you asking? So, right, I think we have a zero-dimensional picture because we don't have, and that's why we're having a discussion this evening. We don't have any attorney that's been suggested from Gray Robinson. We don't have information from Mr. Herron's new firm or the terms in writing, and thus what was put forth was also the other finalists from the last round. So I do think it would be, to me, it would be to evaluate. We're starting over in a sense. The question is how far back we want to start or whether or not we want to. I just think we need to look at all the options and see what's best for everybody. I agree, happened with some of the comments that were made, that to be transparent, I think we need to hear from what would be the best option for us and not limit ourselves.
Our next commission is what, approximately 2 weeks, right?
March 3rd?
Tuesday, March 3rd.
I think is it?
Okay. The point I'm trying to make is there enough time for us to call another meeting to where we can have these individuals to come before we have to make the decision of hiring a new attorney?
And then the other issue
March
is
5th.
March 5th.
Yeah.
And so the other issue I have is us sitting without an attorney present. So I don't know if we could have a temporary attorney while we're looking at this, an interim.
Mayor, John Herron has expressed that he wants the commission to know that his obligation is to the village to make sure it's protected in the interim, whatever happens.
Thank you.
So,
Because that to me is the bigger pictures. That's why this meeting is so rushed, in the sense that we don't have an attorney. And we have meetings without counsel, and I don't think that's a good way for the village to run. So I will leave it up to my colleagues as to what they would like to do. I think everybody's spoken.
Then if he agrees that Herron would be here, then I think we should make a motion to postpone this meeting, because we don't need to
We can't postpone the meeting with having the meeting, but I do think we have to have a decision on how you want to present. Does everybody here want to only have to have either option A, option B, or do you want to add an option C? That's really what this is. I think Commissioner Tudor said A and B, where he only wants to have the two firms considered. You don't even want to move past that point until you consider it. I'm just making sure we clear everybody here. You basically are saying the same thing I think that the Vice Mayor is saying. And if you could repeat, I think you said A, B, and C, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
Okay. I'm in the A, B, and C realm as well. I'd like to look at all options on the table, and so that we can make a decision one way or the other fairly to everybody. Because I do think we're kind of starting over because we don't know what the firm is. So do you want to invite presentations? Do you want to just read it and then have another meeting and decide again and have another meeting, or do you want to have them present?
Another meeting, but I also like to hear from the attorney himself.
Well, here's my question. Do you want to hear from, and I'm going to ask my colleagues, do you want to read and then come back and make a decision, or do you want to read and then have parties present?
I want the parties present.
You want parties presenting. What would you like, sir?
All I really need at this point is to review the information John Herron provided, and I would like Gray Robinson to notify us of who they would be putting in John Herron's place.
With information to go with that to review.
Yes,
correct?
so I can look at that, see, okay, this is who is going to be the Gray Robinson representative at our meeting, so I can look at them, look at their background, just like we did when we selected Gray Robinson. The firm was a key factor in the selection, and Herron's experience was, kind of closed the deal. I'd like to see what Gray Robinson, since they're still our attorneys, what are they going to be offering? What are they going to be presenting? Who's the individual? What is their experience? What is their background? Like I said, we may find that that the relationship is not going to be in the best interest of the village at this time, at which point we'll have to terminate that relationship with Gray Robinson. And what I would do is then pursue that relationship with Fox Rothschild, with John Herron. However, with the process, we may have to open the whole process up. That's some guidance that we'll have to get I'm not an expert in that field, so we have to get some guidance to find out, what is the best, what's the best way. If we terminate the relationship with Gray Robinson, my gut would tell me that we would have to open the process up again. But, we could always get some guidance from a wiser authority.
Anybody else?
I think my thoughts concur with Commissioner Tudor that I'm fine to read through all of the information and then at the next meeting determine, if we do indeed need to open this back up. But the starting point is having all the information in front of me the same way it was in front of me when we had selected John Herron as our attorney with Gray Robinson. So I agree with that. I just need to be able to digest all this information because we're not just continuing on with Mr. Herron at this new firm. To me, it would be irresponsible to make that decision right now on the fly without reviewing that information on his new firm.
Yeah, I concur with that.
Yep, I'm in the same boat, that we need to take a closer look at this on paper, and then if we need to meet subsequently to determine whether or not we want to open up to presentations because what we see on paper isn't satisfying, we can do that at a later date. But with John Herron's commitment to have our backs between now and then, I think it turns down the fire and we can deliberate.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah, so the key is also if I wasn't happy with John Hearn, if we were happy with...
I just want to caution you here, just for a moment on that. This is not a performance review, so I want to be very careful that we're not doing that.
I'm not saying,
okay,
I'm just saying
you.
if we hired him and we hired Gray, both of them, so if he's just moving to a new firm, then we should be hearing from the other firm, because we're not, unless you're saying that he wasn't doing a good job, which I notice is not a performance. I know,
Thank you.
Please, I understand, I appreciate that you're watching out, but I need to finish my comments. I just think that we need to also hear from the other firm, because if he's done a good job here, or if he hasn't done a good job here, we need to, we're just, either we keeping Gray or we keep the other guy, and then we have to choose between the other firm.
Or open, right.
Yeah, one of the two.
All right, so we good at this meeting? So
Okay.
So the direction is, go ahead.
Just one quick thing. What we need to do, for John Herron to have all his files from Gray Robinson, all of that, we'll need the mayor to sign the letter saying that we're going with John Herron at this point. Because otherwise Gray Robinson's keeping the files, keeping all of that information until we tell them to release it to John Herron. So just be aware of that.
I just want to defer to our practicing attorney on the commission to execute the letter as written suggests that we've made a final choice, and I think it would be we'd properly request an understanding or a modification of the writing, because we shouldn't be checking a box that could commit us to an engagement. We need to acknowledge what we've just learned via, I don't know if it was text or email from him, and the terms under which we are operating.
It's also a little disconcerting to me, even the letter, the way it was, because it seems like even from the firm, Gray Robinson, it's rushing this process that I don't think we're seeing now sitting here we can't do, because we're missing a piece of information, the new firm, and we have a letter before us that is like telling us this or this, and that's not what we're deciding here right now as a commission. So there needs to be a modification, because I wouldn't say for us to execute that letter, because it would be as if we made a decision today.
Well, and that's what I'm asking is how you guys would like to proceed
So,
with that, because that's...
May I ask something?
Sure.
I'm not an attorney, so I'll defer to my colleagues here. Is there any way, at least we have an interim attorney from somewhere, and I hate to reach out to John Hearn and maybe ask him, is there any way we could have an interim situation so that we can look at this and not be rushed?
I can reach out to them and see.
If my colleagues concur with me. I just am trying to find a way so we have the time, it's not rushed, it is transparent, and we're doing the process thoroughly. And I don't know if that's a possibility, or if that's an interest of this commission, or find a different interim attorney, somebody who'd be willing to do it interim.
Didn't Hearn already offer to do that? The state,
But he doesn't have our files.
Yeah.
No, not Hearn, I'm sorry,
I mean,
John
Hearn.
Herron. John Hearn, I do this all the time.
John Herron.
John Hearn, who was our former attorney who knows us, if there's any way we could have representation for a month or so until we can find,
With he and Andrew, or?
yeah, and I don't know if he's even available or not, but that's something that we could consider so that we're not doing this rushed, and we make an informed decision and it's transparent to the community. I'm just trying to come up with a solution, because if not, what the other alternative is, we're going to be without an attorney, okay? And if anything comes up, we don't have an attorney.
Why would we have
we-
no attorney?
We would have.
We don't have an attorney now.
We have an
well,
attorney.
Greg
We
Robinson.
do have an attorney, Mayor.
Ray Robinson.
Okay, so do you want to
mean,
reach out to Greg Robinson and ask him to have a sitting attorney?
I don't feel there seems to be this manufactured pressure where there should be none. Our contract was with Gray Robinson, and the reason why I like going with a firm as opposed to a sole practitioner, and I made it known at the time, was for situations like this. If
Okay.
there's a personnel change, you have some stability. We still have legal representation from Gray Robinson. That is who our actual attorney is. So, there is no rush that, oh my gosh, we
Okay.
have no one to represent us. The only thing for us to decide is looking at, and this is just my opinion, is looking at Gray Robinson today to find out if it still meets our needs, or would we want to terminate that relationship and pursue a relationship possibly with Fox Rothschild and John Herron?
Okay.
And the only thing I have a question on is, if we terminate the relationship from Gray Robinson, can we just go there, or do we need to open up a whole process? That is really the question for me, and I don't really have that definitive answer.
So instead then, can we ask, can you reach out to Gray Robinson and make sure we have at least an attorney that in the meantime is going to until we make a decision?
I can do that, yes.
Is that okay with everybody in the commission?
That's what
Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Good?
So when are we going to have?
And if John Herron has knowledge, he might be able to work with Gray Robinson during that transition, just to make sure we're covered without having to sign a letter.
So are we going to have another meeting, or?
They're going to send an attorney, and then we're going to get, my understanding is step one is get us all the information. I'm going to ask politely in the audience if you would refrain. Thank you. I think we first have to get the information sent to us. It can be brought up in our next meeting, which is in 2 weeks. We will have coverage at that point because they will send an attorney. If there's a situation where they can't send an attorney or they don't have that expertise, then we'll have to have a special meeting, I guess, to discuss that. Does that sound reasonable?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay?
Okay.
Okay. With that, we're going to go ahead and make a motion to adjourn the special commission meeting. It is... Hold on, I need that clock. I'm looking for a clock. 7:13. We're going to take a 5-minute recess to come back. For those of you, we'd appreciate if you would stay. We're having a code board workshop, and I look forward to hearing from the public. Thank you very much. With a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn the special commission meeting.
Second?
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting